Hey everyone, welcome back to the Stay on Your Bike podcast. Pretty excited this week because there's been some really cool news I've been following over the last couple of weeks, and I've got a guest on today that works for a brand that I've loved for many years, and that I've had the opportunity to ride their bikes over the last 12 months, which I'm absolutely loving. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome the CEO of Evil Bikes, Jason Moeschler. Thank you for coming on, Jason.
Nigel, thanks for having me, man. It feels odd for me to be on your podcast because I'm a listener. And so you know how when you're a listener of something or a fan of something, and I'm a fan of so many people that you've interviewed, when you asked me to be on this podcast, I was like, really? So
No,
thank you.
oh,
I'm so excited to be here.
oh no, thank you for coming on. It's great. I love to obviously I chat to a lot of athletes and racers and stuff, and a lot of people that I already know. But when I get the opportunity to speak with people like yourself within the industry, for me, it's like super interesting, and I really enjoy those ones. So, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time. I know it's a busy time for you guys at the moment. I can see in the background there's a very special bike there. The brand new offering looks amazing. I've watched all the reviews on YouTube and your launch videos and stuff, and it looks like a lovely bike. Do you want to? Should we start off chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, I could talk about the new bike all day.
I bet.
So if you let me go, I will go. But yeah, do you have an initial question or would you like
Well,
me to?
obviously, so as I said earlier, I've always been a big fan of Evil Bikes. I just, from being a little tiny kid, I've kind of liked bikes from visually. If I see a bike that's I think looks cool, I always wanted one. Or I've always really liked brands that are a bit different, maybe, and not as mainstream as stuff. Even growing up as a kid, with BMX bikes and stuff, I was always interested in the new bike brands that came out and stuff. But um, as I say, I've been lucky enough to ride three different Evils over the last 12 months, which everyone's amazing. I've got a Reckoning. I've got the previous offering, which is the Reckoning and the offering are really good bikes for where I live. It's kind of like we've got a lot of steep tech stuff, but and there's some relatively fast things. We've got some downhill tracks, but it's not like bike park downhill. So the offering's that capable. The 141 travel bike, I have a 160 fork on it. And sometimes I go out on that and I prefer that to the Reckoning, and then other days I prefer my Reckoning. But I think this bike that you've got behind you now is it's like the perfect bike for where I live. As obviously as well as the EPO. I do ride my EPO quite a lot now, which is fantastic.
Yep,
So
yep.
so what's the biggest change over the offering that I've got and the new version?
Well, everything is different. We hear a lot. I think a lot of people, when a bike brand takes a lot of time to come out with a new bike, and especially where the industry is right now, I think a lot of people were wondering, is Evil okay? Like, are they doing okay? But man, Nigel, like, we've been in the background designing up a storm, and it's just been a flurry of activity over here. And when you do a ground up design like this, where literally everything on the bike is different except for the bearing sizes and the seat collar, like some really minimal things didn't change, but everything else changed. And it really starts with, well, it depends who you talk to. If you talk to Dave Weigel, it starts with the geometry and the suspension kinematics. If
Yep.
you talk to Kevin Walsh, our other owner, it starts with the art and the industrial design and the it looks fast while it's standing still type of thing. And
Yep.
that's the benefit of Evil, is where we work with the two best designers that I know, Dave Weigel and Kevin Walsh. Weigel for geo and kinematics, Walsh for design, graphics. industrial design, like just making things look so good.
Yeah, it
And
does look good.
and when you have two passionate designers like that, things take time, right?
Yeah,
Uh, Kevin likes to say, you can't rush art, right? To him, our bikes are art, right? They
yeah,
are, and artists take a while. And to be honest, Weagle is a little bit faster because he's so good at his craft and because we don't get in his way, right? When Weagle hands us geometry and kinematics, you can take that to the bank. It's like, okay, buddy, like, let's go, right? And then it can be a little bit frustrating for him because then the designers get involved and they're trying to make it look, this way
yeah.
and that way. But so the biggest changes are geometry. Slacker head tube, steeper, very much steeper seat tube angle. We made the chain stays about 5 millimeters longer,
Hmm.
and so that combination of those plus adding 10 millimeters on the front and the back. So it went from a 140 bike to a 150 bike in the rear, 151. And then the front, we took our standard 150 travel, bumped it up to 160.
Yep.
Uh, so it just became this. The offering has always been our do it all, right? We've always wanted that bike to go to a rider and the rider to say, gosh, I don't know if I ever really need a longer travel bike. And I also don't know if I ever need a shorter travel bike. Like this thing kind of does everything for me. And I really like hearing you, as like a really good rider. It's good for you to hear how uh, you like riding our bikes on the steeps because a lot of people look at evil geometry and they're like, it's not aggressive enough, it's not slack enough, it's not long enough to be good on the steeps. Uh, you just have to try it, right? You just because of the way Weagle designs these bikes, it's not just one number anywhere, right? It's the combination of everything that makes them so good.
Yeah.
So, uh,
It's
yeah.
hard to explain, isn't it? Because previous to, getting hold of the Evil bikes, yeah, I would have said, the bikes I'd ridden before did have slacker head angles, and I always liked a slack head angle because where I used to live before I moved to Scotland, we didn't really have steep trails. So anywhere where I went where it was steep, I always thought, oh, I need a slack head angle to give me the confidence. Um, but since moving to the Tweed Valley in Scotland, where there's a lot of steep trails, and then when I jumped on the my first Evil bike, which the first one I rode was the Reckoning, I was like, well, this is steeper head angle than my last bike. But like you said, the whole bike working together, I've now come away from wanting something super slack because you have something super slack and then it doesn't work as good in other situations. um so yeah, so far I've been super impressed with the way the bikes work, and what I've been describing to people, because I'll be honest, Evil isn't hasn't been a very popular brand in the UK for a while. You don't see a lot of Evil bikes. It's kind of like whenever I bump into someone on Evil, I stop and we have a chat, because once you've had one, people realize how good they are. But it's difficult to explain. Like previously to that, I'd ridden sort of a nuke-proof Mega and a nuke-proof Giga, which I had a lot of design involvement in. And the Giga I really liked because it felt super planted like a mini downhill bike. But then when I got on the Reckoning, it worked just as good, if not better than the Giga for being planted. But then it felt really lively and poppy like the Mega did. So it was kind of like the perfect balance between those two bikes that we were riding previously. So I loved it
Mm-hmm.
straight away. And then, like I say, it got the offering, and I thought, that's only I'd ridden shorter travel bikes before, 140 bikes, and once you get used to your own trails, you forget what bike you're on, and you start trying to ride the speed that you're riding on your longer travel bike, and then you start thinking, oh, I'm gonna, it's getting a bit out of hand. but on the off-road, it was again, it was super capable for a shorter travel bike. Um, so,
Yeah,
but I think you have to ride one and try it. It's so hard to explain how good they are.
for sure, for sure. And we are crazy, crazy honored and flattered that a rider like yourself chooses to ride Evil. And then when a rider like yourself who has so much experience gets on one and everything clicks, right? For us, that's what we look for. And having you, having Mark Beaumont over in the UK, right? It's like, yes, we're not huge in the UK, but speaking to what you said earlier, where Evil is smaller and we do things very different. we're a small privately owned company, and not one of our owners is out for world domination. And that's why I love working at Evil. That's why I love running this business, because typically CEOs or presidents of a business, they've got their owners or their board of directors feeding them numbers. We need to hit this number of units this year, or we need to hit this number of profit. Not once in my 8 years here at Evil have I ever heard that from one of the owners. The only thing the owners care about is that when our next bike drops, it's going to be as cool as this thing behind me and
Great.
as desirable. And to them, it is all about this craft of making these bikes. And then aside from that, it's this healthy business of our staff, right? If you ask our owners, like, what makes Evil, I think even Weagle would say, like, we all know that Delta System and Weagle's geometry and kinematics plus Kevin Walsh's looks, right? It's like an unmistakable, beautiful bike. But when you ask the owners, they're like, well, no, the staff makes Evil. Like, we have this group of people that cares so much about everything we do, and they carry so much pride,
Mm.
right? So when you join those two things together, it's just this magic combination of an incredibly unique business. And so to speak towards why we're not in the UK or why you don't see us, right? One, we don't have this agenda to have global expansion. And I do think we were more present in the UK prior to COVID, and we
Yeah,
had more dealer support and everything.
of
But COVID really shook things up, and
course.
the bike industry is in the process of demolition. And
Yeah,
there will be survivors, but
yeah.
we are not through the hardest part of it, in my opinion. And so
Great.
uh, Evil is just very focused on what we do best. We're not focused on numbers. And if we were, I think we would have been gone a long time ago, right? Because we did have dealers that really wanted to place big pre-orders during COVID. Uh, we're a cash business, right? It's like, if we can't afford what we're ordering, like, we're not going to order it. And we
Yeah,
kind of lost out in that COVID boom, right? But it's better for us now.
yeah.
And yeah, so, and we have so much pride in showing what we've been working on for, it's been 5 years, right? It's been 5 years since the launch of the last offering. That's a long run, but
Yeah.
it's also so cool to work here at Evil, and we have a whole demo fleet here. It is so cool to have people who have gone and ridden other brand new models of bikes that just launch, and then they come ride the offering that
Mm.
launched in 2020,
Yeah,
and they choose the offering,
yeah,
right? It's just this magic. It's just magic.
yeah. No,
And I'm
it's
so fortunate to be a part of it.
no, it's great. I mean, what you've just explained there with, with Dave and Kevin, you've got those two, coming up with the bikes, and then I watched, your videos, and I watched the video that you presented on YouTube with all the different staff, and it to me it looks like the perfect blend of everybody there loves riding bikes. If we all didn't love bikes and riding bikes, what's the point in being in this industry? Do you know what I mean? It's a passionate industry as much as anything else. And yeah, just to me it looks, you've got the perfect combination there. However, you're trying to compete a certain extent with there's so many brands now out there that are, spending crazy amounts of money in marketing and on big race teams and high earning YouTube riders and stuff. So, you as well as what you're doing, you're trying to compete with all those guys as well. But I think, it's important that, like you said, if you'd have kind of sold out in COVID and tried to go too big too quickly, then I think that's why some of these brands are falling. And now they've been too greedy. Do you know what I mean? And
And maybe not all of them were greedy, Nigel. There was a serious situation. I mean, in November of 2019, the max lead time for parts that we ordered for our bikes were 90 days. And then by middle of 2020, those lead times had spiked to like 750 days. So even Little Evil, we had to have a lot of stuff on order for a long ways out, and we had never done anything like that before.
yeah,
Um, where we differ, though, is that because we didn't take those huge pre orders, and also because we don't use offsite assembly plants in Asia or anywhere else, we
hmm
assemble our bikes here in the US in Bellingham and in Spain. So uh, we work directly with our parts vendors instead of having to rearrange orders through an assembly factory. And the way it works with an assembly factory is like me, the bike brand, I call or email, I'm like, hey, we've got like this year and a half worth of orders and I need you to postpone or cancel, blah, blah, blah. And then the assembler has to go to all the vendors and then they come back and they're like, well, you have to take all the saddles, but I can cancel half the tires on this one, but you have to take all the tires on this one.
yeah,
And then you're left with pieces of bikes.
yeah,
And so that's literally where we're left. And inventory is all of our biggest expense.
of course.
And
Yeah,
so when you're in inventory trouble, you, especially inventory that you don't necessarily want, and you
yeah,
don't want to borrow money to pay for that inventory,
yeah.
things get hard real quick.
I bet.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Because I mean, things that even with your last model of bikes, you had to adjust and change the rear end for the new UDH hanger and little things like that. And the industry is always changing small aspects of the bike. So even if you've designed a bike that can last 5 years, some little mini things might change that you have to address, which I guess is hard as well.
you're correct. And yeah, all of our models got the UDH update to the rear end
Hmm
sometime in 2022 so
Yeah,
that we were ready for when SRAM launched that transmission drivetrain. And that might seem like a little adjustment, but from our side, it's kind of a big one. It
yeah,
it, it required some new tooling, some modified tooling, stuff like that. So it's a good midstream adjustment though for a perfectly good bike.
yeah,
And the other place where evil is different is when we make those adjustments, and that includes part specs, right? We don't have model years. So when one of our vendors, or all of our vendors, they kind of have new product almost every year. And that gives bike brands the excuse to have a new model year, right? So that dealers have something new and exciting.
yeah.
Often the frame just changed color
I
and
know.
it just has updated part spec. And Evil doesn't even play that game because when you start adding all those colors every year, then you have to start thinking about customer support.
hmm
And if a customer has an accident or a warranty claim, you want to
Yeah,
be able to get the customer what they bought in the
yeah,
color that they got, right? I
yeah,
hear these stories of how some of the bigger brands are delivering, white triangles or whatever. And it's like, oh man, that's tough. That's
yeah,
that's a bummer. But I understand why. And we
yeah.
just don't do it that way because we just don't do it that way.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's cool that you stick to your own guns because I think, I've had dealings with other brands, and I've been in a meeting and said like, I'd like this bike, like us to make this bike and want it like this, but then people look at what the mainstream brands are doing and say, no, that's too different to what everyone else is doing, and they get a bit scared to do that. But I like how you guys, make what you want and stick with it, and that's what I would do, if I was kind of had a bike brand. Um,
For sure.
yeah,
And it's another reason why I like working here. And I can recall when Evil really started doing bikes in 2008. And I was at the time I was working at WTB and I was doing OEM sales. So I worked with all of the bike brands. And I'll never forget being at Taichung Bike Week, which is an OEM trade show for the bike brands. It's where they're solidifying their specification for the following model year. And all any bike brand wanted to talk to me about this year was what is Evil doing? Like, what is going on over there? Like, oh, they got Gabe Fox and Saplavy and Walsh and Weagle. Like, this is crazy. And there was images being leaked way before they should have been leaked, and the way they were showing the frames and the bikes just looked so good. And right, but from the onset, and I was privileged because WTB was a partner of Evil early on. We were a supplier. We were also a supporter of the race team, right? And so just watching the way Evil did everything, right? Showing up to World Cup races with big old, big old race tents with, Mexican midgets wrestling and Catholic schoolgirls knife fighting as the graphics. Like, what in the world is going on here, right? But that ethos goes through everything that this company does, right? This company is not like, we do not look at competition for what to do. We are comfortable enough in our own shoes and we have enough experience between everyone under our umbrella to just make our own moves as we see fit. And so, yeah, it's maybe we won't ever dominate the world, but that's okay. Like,
Who wants to?
totally, that's a good way to get yourself in trouble
Yeah.
and your business in trouble.
Yeah.
Seems like.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Definitely.
yeah.
And so does Kevin have the last say on the color of the bikes, the aesthetics of the bike? Is that all him, or is there a team of people that do that?
There's a team, and Kevin is getting more and more comfortable with the team, right?
Okay.
And when I first joined, Kevin was always the last say. But as you get into a rhythm, things start, everybody starts working on the same clip. And so, but yes, we do still like for Kevin to have the final sign off, even today, on industrial design. Kevin does still select all of the colors and he
Okay.
names the colors
I
because,
love the names.
he's got
Really.
a bit of a twisted mind. And if you
Yeah.
look into any of our color names, you probably chuckle or be offended. I'm not sure which, but we haven't gotten sued yet about one of those. So I'm happy about that. Maybe
Brilliant.
off putting for some, but again, we're being Evil, right? We're doing things the way we want to do things, not the way everyone else is doing things. And Kevin said it best early on. There was one. Oh, it was the grip name, or handlebar grips. He decided to call it Pamela Henderson, and I was like, Kevin,
Brilliant.
you can't do that. You can't, like, it's super funny, but this is gonna offend some people. And he's like, Jason, if I can't have fun,
Yeah.
what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
business is hard enough. He's like, if I to me, this is funny.
Yeah.
And I'm part of Evil Bikes and I get to make these decisions. And I'm like, okay, we'll let it go.
Yeah.
We did offend some people,
Surely.
but again, we're not trying to own the market. So it's
No.
okay if we offend some people. We get it.
If you're offended and you don't like it, you don't have to get involved and buy it, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly. At least we're being authentic.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so when you first started at Evil, was it a big change from working at WTB? Like what was the biggest changes?
Yeah. So I've actually only had 4 jobs in my life, Nigel.
Well, that's
I
good for you.
started I started at a bike shop as a
Yeah,
trash boy when I was
yeah,
14 years old,
yeah.
and just I benefited from the people there. This was a very old bike shop that had a lot of heritage, and this is back in the days when frames were still made out of chromoly, right? Like aluminum wasn't even becoming a thing yet. And this shop could, like, they could straighten frames or replace tubes in frames, right? Like there was real mechanics at this
Yeah.
shop. And I greatly benefited from them and their mechanical know-how and their patience with being able to teach me how to do a lot of this stuff, but also how to take care of customers and how to run a business and how to promote a business. And then most important for me, how to be a good rider, right? That's where I got my education in riding.
Where was the
Say that
bike
again.
shop?
The bike shop was Tour of Nevada City. So it's in Northern California,
Yeah.
and it's over a 50-year-old shop now. So
Oh,
it's been
brilliant.
around for forever. So the heritage is incredible.
Yeah.
So now, as we know, bike shop employees and bike shops in general, right? There's not a lot of money floating around those things, right? And so eventually I did get lured out of the bike shop, and my father-in-law hired me for a construction job. And when you can make twice the money, it's like, okay, okay, I guess I better do this. And but I did that for 3 years, and I was recruited by WTB. And so WTB is also a Northern California company. They're based in Marin County, where the mountain bike was kind of created, right? Mount Tamalpais. And um, so same thing at WTB. I just had a group of people that were so good at being mentors for me. They all took me under their wings. And whether it be the owners, Mark Slate and Patrick Seidler, or my direct boss, Gary Gleason, or on the riding and racing side, Mark Weir, right? I just had this incredible group of people because I was still young, right? I was still green. But so I was there for 9 years, and they eventually put me into the OEM sales role, which was so much more than OEM sales, because when you're selling to bike brands, you have to come up with new product a couple years down the line that gets them to go, oh, maybe I should make a bike for that, right? If
Yeah.
you're following, if you're like, oh, they made a 29-inch tire, I better make a 29-inch tire. That's not OEM sales. That's not being a good supplier. You
Yeah.
have to be innovative too.
Yeah.
Bike brands are busy. It's hard for, I don't know how some of these big bike brands have so many models. I don't know how their product managers function. I
Yeah.
feel bad for them because they do incredible work, but at the same time, it's hard to make everything perfect. So at WTB, they're a very innovative company, right? 29-inch, right? Arguably they came out with 29-inch too early. I mean, it almost killed them before it made them better
Yeah.
because the bike industry wasn't ready. Um,
I
but
think I think I rode a prototype intense in about maybe '08, '09, and I think the only tires they could get was WTB tires for it.
Yep, the
Yeah. I
WTB
remember that.
Kodiak, it was the
Yeah.
only aggressive 29-inch tire that you could buy.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yep, yep. And so WTB is also a small company, like a pretty small group of people. They are global, though. They have production all over the world, and they have an office in Czech Republic, and they have offices in China and Taiwan.
Mhm.
And so, in that regard, it's a much bigger footprint.
Yeah.
So, when I came to work at Evil, uh, it was very different, very different. 7 people, I think we had 7 people when I started at Evil, and uh, let's see. I think there was 3 models by then. There was the following V1, there was the Reckoning, and there was the Insurgent, and they were just getting ready to launch the following MB. So Evil was literally just climbing up out of the hole that had been dug from the aluminum bike era, and so yeah.
Obviously we may as well t touch on that because well, you just mentioned the race team and an Evil getting launched. That was the same year as I um, joined Chain Reaction Cycles and started a race team for them. Uh,
Mhm.
and I remember seeing your bikes and your graphics, and I knew some of the riders that were riding the bikes and stuff, and it looked super cool. But then we were busy doing our thing and trying to create this race team and riders, and yeah, I guess you guys were our rivals, and then there was some problems, wasn't there, with the aluminum bikes? what kind of happened there? Was what went wrong with that?
So Evil was a small company,
Mhm.
and there was at that time there was a lot of trust put into the frame factories that were building these aluminum bikes. And so the way it works is you get samples first, right? You have samples made, and then the samples go to the riders, and the samples were phenomenal, right? And so then you go back to the factory and you're like, okay, factory, we're golden,
Yeah,
mass produce, right? These samples are perfect. Make a bunch of these just like this.
right.
And what happened is that the mass production didn't go well, and part of managing mass production is trying to be there and or at least have people there that you trust that
Yeah,
can effectively manage it. Because once you get that mass production out to the whole production floor, there's plenty of opportunity for things to go wrong. And
yeah,
that's exactly what happened to Evil a couple times. And the company paid dearly for it. And at that point, I was at WTB watching from the outside, just really rooting for them, right? Because
yeah,
the frames were still and the brand was still like the coolest.
yeah. It still was, yeah,
It's like this in the back of my head. I was like, this is gonna work, right? This is gonna work. Like eventually, like I'm giving them a bunch of free saddles and stuff right now to like help keep them afloat. But like eventually, they're gonna become a good customer,
yeah.
and it happened.
And it happened, yeah. And because I've not been sort of involved in that side of things with factories, when you've got such a cool design like what, Dave and Kevin and the guys came up with, how do you then choose the factory to build that bike? How does that process happen?
There's any number of ways it can happen. Sometimes it's a simple introduction because you don't know anyone. Sometimes it's a friend of a friend, something like that. And then sometimes there's factory reputation.
Mhm.
And in Evil's case, they went through three different aluminum factories, all with really good reputations, which is even more of a head scratcher, right? Because it's like, no, 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 they clearly can make bikes better, or like better bikes, in mass production.
Yeah,
But I think it was a management problem from Evil side where it just the mass production wasn't being managed correctly on Evil side. And
yeah,
everyone that was there at the time, right? They would all nod their heads to that now. It's like, yeah, we could have done better. It was a super bummer. And it took the company a long time to dig out from that hole.
yeah,
And it was
yeah,
very disappointing to a lot of customers, and could be one of the reasons why, we haven't grown more, right?
yeah.
Maybe people are hesitant from that period of time, right?
Yeah,
But if you
yeah,
don't learn from your mistakes and improve, then you're nothing. And Evil has certainly learned from all of their mistakes, and
yeah.
uh, we always look back to the archives to make sure we don't make the same mistake twice. So
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's many bike brands that haven't, had issues with certain models, and when you, especially when you're getting your bikes made in a factory, that you're not, if you're making your bike in-house in the workshop, you can keep on top of that, can't you? But when your bikes are getting made from such a far away place, it's always going to be a challenge to manage that, I imagine. Um,
absolutely.
and I'm sure there's many other brands that have had problems other than Evil, but I guess maybe when you're a smaller, cooler brand, that's what people remember, maybe, and then you've got to move past that and then create new demand for your brand. And and then in this day and age, I'm no marketing expert, so what do obviously if you've got a huge marketing budget, you can have big race teams. It seems at the moment brands are going more back into promoting their brands in downhill again, which was the original, which what you guys did. Then over the past 10 years, enduro really went on the rise, didn't it? because
Mhm.
what the bikes that people were riding were more enduro bikes because you can do a bit of everything on them. Um, I mean, just as an example, Max Commensal, the amount of money and effort they put into race teams and sports marketing is crazy to me. It doesn't, I don't quite understand how you can spend that much money on those teams. Um, but where is Evil at in marketing? Where do you feel is the best way to market your brand and what you want to market?
So, as I said before, we like to rely on our product. We let our product speak for itself. And for us to have a race team of the scale of some of these other brands, we would have to become a sales company and a marketing company. And
Yeah,
that's not what we are. We are a design company through and through. And we don't want to be sales and marketing. That's not us. That's not who we are. So would we love nothing more than to have our bikes on the top of a World Cup podium? Absolutely. I've raced professionally for 22 years. I religiously watch bike racing every weekend, right? I'm watching cyclocross right now. I watch road. I pay attention to everything. I'm maybe the biggest race fan I know. And I would love to have Evils out there. But for us, it's just as validating to have a person like you riding our bikes and singing the praise of the bikes, right? It's you can validate a product two ways. You can go win races, or you
yeah,
can have a person like you, or a lot of people like you. And
yeah.
that's what Evil has is a lot of people like you. And the risk with racing is you can cough up a lot of money and you can get a really good rider and maybe they're just off the podium or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you're not on the top step,
Mm,
you're not getting a whole lot of recognition.
no.
And you can spend a lot of money chasing that top step for a long time. And so we just choose not to do it. And I'll, as much as I hate to say it too, uh, like the racers haven't been saving these bike companies, right? It's almost a demonstration of how race teams are not responsible for as many sales as we think because like Sam Hill should have absolutely been able to save Nuke Proof. All of the riders on YT, right? All of the world champions. Like in my mind, like I'm very traditional bike industry. I've been in it for 32 years. Those riders should have absolutely validated YT's product enough to save that company, but it didn't happen because there's bigger forces at play here. So the way Evil's operating in our own little dark corner of the industry is just kind of working. And so, yeah,
Yeah, no, I 100% agree and applaud what you guys are doing because, with regards to Nuke Proof, if that had been a company on its own, it was working, it was making money, it wasn't losing money. It was just the bigger company that owned Nuke Proof was, once you've got shareholders
yep.
and people who just want to pull money out of the company when you make money. I think that's the downfall of
Mm.
especially for our industry because we're all more passionate people that just want to ride and sell bikes. It's so what you guys are doing is so cool and good to see. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, I don't think we're out of this crisis in the industry. And if some of these bigger brands do go under, I think it's only going to be beneficial to the smaller brands like Evil that will, people still want to buy cool bikes. So if some of these bigger brands are not around, for instance, then it's only going to benefit the smaller brands that have weathered the storm, I think.
Maybe eventually. From my perspective, Nigel, it's not good for any brands when existing bike brand goes out of business. You might
No.
think that, okay, cool, we've got some competition cleared and people will maybe look more at our bikes now. But from my perspective, from running a business, it only prolongs the pain and misery, because when you have a company as big as Nuke Proof or Chain Reaction or as big as YT that goes under, there's a lot of inventory that has to
Yeah,
go somewhere.
I
There
know.
are there are creditors that had loaned those companies money, and they want something back, and they'll
Yeah,
take pennies on the dollar. And so all of a sudden you've got very usable bike parts, derailleurs and brakes and stuff like that, that enter the market for way too cheap.
yeah,
And that is what is being so hard on all of us. In addition to, there is still inventory that, these bigger brands ordered from COVID that's still out there.
yeah,
The combination is just, it's really hard. And
yeah,
it's a great time to be a consumer.
yeah,
It's not for a bike consumer. If you're searching for new bikes, it is not a great time to be a rider trying to sell a used bike, obviously,
no.
because, it's like, why would you buy a used bike if you can get a new one for this? And
Yeah,
so it's,
yeah,
and like I mentioned earlier, right? Like Evil just spent 5 years working on this bike.
yeah,
That's industrial designers, that's engineers, that's expensive employees, right? Like
yeah,
the amount of money we have to spend, uh, and then that doesn't count the money we got to spend to get the frames here and get the parts
yeah,
here, right?
yeah,
The upfront commitment is huge, and we really need those bikes to sell for a fair
yeah,
price.
yes,
And if they don't, that's how you end a company.
yeah.
So
I know
it's I'll tell you, man, that like it's a risk launching a bike right now. Like you've got to have confidence that
yeah,
it is truly good and that people will pay for your work, right? It's no
yeah,
different than an artist trying to sell their art, right? It's like
yeah,
you could have wasted a lot of time and effort for nothing. And so
yeah. No, it's 100%. It's challenging. Because you know people that don't know or haven't been able to access an evil and try it and understand how nice they ride, they might look at that new bike and think, oh, that's nice, but another brand is selling their bikes up at 50% off. I'm just going to go and buy one of those. And I'm sure that's happening globally.
absolutely. And we see those people a lot of times. It's an evil rider that goes and buys one of those much less expensive bikes because why wouldn't you, right? It's a fantastic deal. But
Yeah.
then we also see the buyer's remorse that comes behind that, right? Because it doesn't ride like an evil. Like nothing rides like an evil. And so uh, we figure we'll eventually get those customers back.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That belief that you guys have got in your own product is amazing. It's super cool to see that. Um, and so let's take a little step back on, you mentioned a bit earlier you've, rode professionally for so many years. Where did you start out in bikes and what's your, what's been your kind of path with racing and bike riding and what you love to do the most yourself?
Yeah, so I started in bikes right around the age of 14. And that's basically when I started working at the bike shop. The bike shop was very close to my house. And so every day after school, I'd walk down there and I'd just be this kid drooling over bikes. And at the time, I was riding a pretty substandard, cheap Mongoose Alta or something like that with, Shimano Alivio or whatever, right? It was like a $300 bike in that day,
Yeah.
and I rode the living crap out of that bike. And I wanted that bike to do what I could see on the posters at the bike shop or what I could see in the catalogs at the bike shop. And so it was kind of a combination of those people that worked at the bike shop and some people that my mom worked with that rode mountain bikes. They all started taking me out for bike rides. And it was the best thing ever. Prior to bike riding, I played baseball and soccer and all the typical young kid sports in the US, and
Hmm.
I really enjoyed those. But
Hmm.
nothing was like the freedom that a bike made me feel. Just being out on the trail in a river canyon or, climbing a mountain, going downhill. There's people that are born that they're born with the handling skills. They're born knowing how to ride a bike well and handle a bike well. I'm fortunate to be one of those. Not the best, but like I could handle a bike pretty good. There's
Yeah.
other people that they're born and they have to work their whole life to be a better bike handler. So I was very fortunate to like just have handling skills when I got on the bike.
Yeah.
And so at a pretty young age, by the time I was 16, I was junior national cross country champion here in the U.S.
Amazing.
and got to go to world championships for the first time. Honestly, Nigel, I didn't even know what world championships was when I qualified for them. I was racing in Mammoth, had a really good day on the bike, and they were taking first place was an automatic selection for world championships at U.S. national championships. And so I'm up on the podium and they told me that I'm the final selection for worlds. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was in 2 weeks in Australia, in Cairns. And
Is this
so I
96?
called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I qualified for this 96. Yeah.
Yeah. Unreal.
So I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, I get to go to Australia in 2 weeks for world championships. I didn't have a passport. I'd never traveled internationally. We certainly didn't have enough money to send me. But people at my mom's work and my dad's work, my stepdad's work, everyone rallied and got the funds together and sent me over. And
Wow.
then John Kemp of the RockShox Devo team let me sleep on the floor at the team housing, and yeah, so that was
Awesome.
my first introduction to world championships, and I went back. I went back as a cross country rider a few times, and then as under 23, and but then I had a bout of chronic fatigue, and I had to drop out for a bit. Racing World Cup cross country is pretty tough,
I imagine. Well, I
and I
can't
didn't have a
imagine what.
coach, and I
Yeah.
was kind of winging it, and I went a little bit overboard.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I was lucky. I got picked up by Team RockShox Devo, and that was
I
like
remember that
the
team.
team to race for back in those days if you were my age. And
Yeah.
they took, yeah, yeah, and they took me all over the world. It was amazing. And then I was able to race for Team Giant under Frank Trotter. Frank Trotter was my mechanic and manager. Steve Westover was the manager. Frank Trotter was the mechanic. So with Miles Rockwell and
Yeah.
Dustin Adams, right? Just like
And Rob
legends.
Warner.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And so, but then I graduated on to Team WTB Santa Cruz with Mark Weir,
Yeah.
and uh, and I was there for what seemed like forever, for I don't know, 8 years or something like that. And that was Mark Weir to me was one of the pioneers of what we call like the all mountain bike, or maybe the enduro bike, right? But he was running single chain ring, chain guides, dropper seat posts, longer travel bikes that shouldn't have been taken on big rides. He was doing all that before anyone that I knew, anyways. And I would always look at him like, what, dude, what are you doing? Right. But he was such a good rider and he was so good on those bikes that was like, okay, I think he's right.
Yeah.
And I benefited because I followed in his footsteps, and we just had bigger advantages at races, if nothing else, Nigel, because of the stupid dropper seat posts, right? Not stupid. It was the gravity dropper. Everyone
Yeah.
thought we were crazy for using this thing, but it was a huge advantage. And
Yeah.
this is before enduro, but it was like super D, long
Yeah.
downhill races.
Yeah.
And Mark and I both had fitness and we both had downhill skills. And so we were doing quite well in
Yeah.
these races. And
Yeah.
so that was, that's what led me into Downieville and the Downieville All-Mountain World Championships, right? It's not UCI World Championships, but
Yeah.
Downieville had this way of attracting everyone, right? You had Steve Peter, Greg Menard, Nathan Rennie, but you had Brian Lopes and you had Jerome Clements and you had Thomas Frischnecht, right? You had this huge variety of riders trying to come and win the all mountain race in Downieville, which was cross country one day,
Yeah.
downhill race the next day. And so I won the very first all mountain world championships, and
Insane.
it was
Yeah.
crazy. It was like this. It was just crazy, and I was fortunate enough to. I had a long gap. I had like a 7 year drought, but I did win it three more times, and
Amazing.
um,
That's incredible.
so
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, yeah, it
it's
was.
a huge, for people in the UK that aren't too familiar with it, it's such a big event, isn't it? It's massive.
It's massive. It's
Yeah.
massive, and the names that it attracts and the people. I'll tell you what, Nigel. Like you want to be intimidated, you get to the start line with somebody that you've never beat in a race before, like Brian Lopes or Thomas Frischnick, and like that is scary. That is scary business, right? It's like holy cow, this does feel like world championships, right? It's like for me, it was no different than going to Cannes that first year, right? And
Yeah.
the only riders I'd ever ridden against were like the Americans that I was with,
Yeah.
basically, and you know, so getting that international field was crazy. But being able to win was
Insane. Yeah.
mind bending, right? I didn't think I was that caliber of rider, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's I
Yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. And what did that bring when you win something like that? What did that bring to you sponsorship wise and earning wise? You know, what does that bring?
so I was, to be honest, Nigel, I was never a real pro rider in terms of I never made a salary from my racing. I worked pretty much whenever I could outside of racing to support myself, and I also I didn't I didn't see a great future after racing for myself. You know, I was like, if I put all of this effort into racing, what am I going to do after? And so I stayed engaged the whole time. I worked at the bike shop, I worked construction, I worked at WTB, and so that was very hard. It was very hard to race at the top level when you were working full time. And honestly, Nigel, I can't say I was racing at the top level. I had some good wins.
Oh,
I think my
that's
best,
to win
honestly,
that is
besides,
incredible.
yeah. But what Downieville did bring was plenty of sponsorship. I had great partners between Santa Cruz and Shimano for that whole span of time, and then it ended with Cannondale. Actually, Mark and I moved over to Cannondale, um, and I finished my time out with them. And uh, so, but what those results brought to me was, you got to remember, I was an OEM salesperson and a product developer for WTB. But when I came and I spoke to the product managers of these bike companies or these engineers, I wasn't just like a sales guy. We spoke the same language. I was a rider, and I could get on their level of what they wanted their bike to do. And it really helped me in my job more than anything. And it was good to be able to work, have health insurance, be saving for retirement, you know, just have a steady flow of income
Yeah.
versus, even though I wanted so badly to race full time and be one of those riders that I so admired, I just had to do it my own way,
Yeah.
and it was good. I don't have any regrets.
No, and trying to do it, not the same as you, but I got into racing not to be to be a mountain bike racer. I just went to a race and did okay at it, and same. And then I wanted to go to more races, but I never made a big salary or anything to be able to pay for life. So, w- you know, the way you did it, it takes away the pressure of to some riders, it's the be all and end all to win the races, and that with that comes pressure to keep your sponsorship and everything else. So able to do it the way you did it is just as admirable, I think, than going just trying to do it as a racer and a pro racer. Because it only lasts for so long, and then you're like, well, what am I going to do now? So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Credit to you. That's amazing. And so what out obviously to win Downieville and you must be an incredible bike rider as well as having the fitness from the cross country. What is your favorite type of riding, would you say?
So I'm still, honestly, Nigel, I'm quite partial to cross country riding. I
Yeah.
love going uphill. I love challenging myself on the climbs. And I'm more about the whole lap, right? I don't just care about the downhill. I Of course I like going fast on the downhill, but I like making time. I like to be able to get on my bike and go do a good lap where I cover a lot of terrain and I get a lot of good downhill and a lot of good climbing. And so when I get on a bigger bike, and don't get me wrong, I love riding our Reckoning fully built out with, heavy tires and all of the tough guy stuff. But when I do that, I can exert the same effort. I use power meters and heart rate monitors on every ride. So I monitor my effort even still. And like I have a basically like a 15-mile loop that I can do here from Evil. And if I take my Reckoning or I take my following, my 120 bike with like cross country wheels, cross country tires built up at 25 pounds, I'm like 30 minutes faster on the following, right? And I got stuff to do, right? I don't have
Yeah.
time to be out there for forever. So to me, I'm like, I can just do so much more on this shorter travel bike. And I don't think people would like the way I build the new bike either, right? Because that bike, it does truly make me wonder would I ever need a bike with longer travel. But I strap lighter wheels and lighter tires on that thing because like then I can get business done and really really go fast going uphill too. And
Okay.
so yeah.
Yeah, well that's interesting because I grew up racing BMXs and then I went into downhill. So I never did cross country or any endurance stuff like you. So I came in from a different angle. But now I'm older and I live in a place where I can ride from the door. We've got like amazing trails here. I've kind of experimented with different things as well. The only problem with here is the trails that I like to ride, they're all quite you know, rooty and rocky and technical. So if you put full on cross country tires, I kind of I lose my confidence and and then don't enjoy the bits that I enjoy the most out of my ride. But I have started to, put more of a faster rolling tire on the rear of the bike where it doesn't matter if it kind of skips around a lot and I have a sticky tire on the front. But that's interesting for me to hear, your take on it for sure. And then tell us a little bit about the following because I read the stories and that was a bike that you always kind of wanted yourself. So tell us a little bit about that because I've not had the chance to ride one of those bikes yet.
Okay. Well, the following, it was designed, Weagle designed that bike to be 120 front, 120 rear. Evil has always sold it as a 130 front, 120 rear, but with like a more burly all mountain enduro kind of spec, heavier tires, wider rims, like bigger rotors, bigger brakes. And so, you can make any bike 30, 33 pounds with the right parts, right?
Yeah.
But can you make that bike 25 pounds, right? And so my logic is like, okay, I already know that the Evil is the best descending 120 millimeter bike made. I can see that all of these cross country riders would absolutely benefit if they rode an Evil like on a World Cup track because like the downhills are getting gnarlier and they're making sacrifices on their rigs right now.
Mhm.
So, and then it just kind of, I got lucky because suspension technologies just kept getting better, kept getting better. And all of a sudden we had RockShox launch the SID flight attendant stuff. And that SID suspension is legitimately good. I mean, it stacks up pound for pound against Pike Fork and a deluxe or even a super deluxe rear shock. Like it is good, but it is so much lighter. So You strap on SID flight attendant, XX drivetrain, light brakes, light wheels, good cross country tire. And all of a sudden, it's like, holy cow, you've got a bike that is 25 and a half pounds that we already know Evils pedal uphill good too. Small bump sensitive, really good rear wheel traction. It's not that I want lockout ever when I'm on the trail, but what flight attendant does is like, say you get onto a road or a dirt road and it's really smooth and you jump out of the saddle and you just want to go, right? Well, flight attendant, it feels that at the power meter at the cranks and it locks out. And so then it's like I'm on our gravel bike, right? It's like,
Yeah.
which is fast. And
Yeah.
so you can go so fast uphill. It feels like it's cheating. And I've actually, most of us run 32 tooth chain rings, some even 29ers 30 tooth. I run a 36 tooth on that following. And I swear to you, it feels as good as a 30 or a 32 tooth. And actually, because I'm injured right now, I've loaned my bike to another local guy who's been thinking of building a following. I didn't tell him that he's on a 36 tooth ring, and he has not said a word. He has no idea. He's just like, this bike feels so fast everywhere.
No
And
way.
it's when you drop that much weight off the bike, when you have suspension that rides that efficient, plus the advantages of flight attendant, I think that when the shock firms up for you, in my head and in my feeling as a rider, it makes you like a gear or two more efficient on the rear cassette. And so
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
an awesome bike. It's just awesome. And I can ride almost anything here on that bike. There's like there's some gnarlier stuff where it's like, okay, maybe not on a bad wet day, but otherwise, like it's an evil going downhill. And we all know what those do.
Yeah.
So
And do you think coming from your cross country background, is that giving you the confidence to ride gnarly, slippy stuff on cross country tires? Because I've come from the downhill background with big, chunky, grippy tires. As soon as I put like a cross country tire on it, I think I'm gonna slide, I'm gonna crash. Do you think that has helped?
yes. Now you have to remember, Nigel, when I started riding and racing bikes, suspension front shocks were just coming out. We still had cantilever brakes, cable actuated cantilever brakes, and really narrow rims, and like a 2.1 tire, 2.1 width tire was a big tire.
Yeah.
So I rode sketchy setups for the whole first part of my career. And when you ride sketchy setups, right, you just get good at it, right? It becomes normal. And so it takes technique to ride light, fast rolling tires. It really does, and it's not for everyone. And uh, the downhills, what I appreciate about it is that the downhills become way harder. You got to
Mm-hmm.
pay way more attention.
Mm-hmm.
You as a rider are working way harder. You're getting way more of a workout between the weaker, lighter brakes and the tires that aren't slowing you down as fast. And like everything is making you pay more attention.
Yep.
Then when I get on the big bike, I feel, I feel like I can't do anything wrong. Like I feel like it's just, it's just me and the trail. It's like, oh, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So it's good. I like it because it really keeps my skills ultra sharp.
Yeah. I mean, I, like I said earlier, I swapped from the offering to the reckoning, and it's the set. It's a little bit like that on that. I get on the reckoning, and it feels a lot easier. But I get on the following, and I kind of, I run flat pedals, and I kind of hop around a lot more than just, use the bike. Uh, and the offering makes me like it's fun. But it does become a little sketchier when you're going flat out than it is on the reckoning. But I kind of like that. Do you know what I mean? And there's plenty of faster guys than me that could ride the bike a lot faster and probably not even need a reckoning. But I know what you're saying there. there is a different feel. But you're making me feel like I need to get a following now and some fast rolling tires because I have got a lot fitter living here because we've got hills straight out the door. So I have got a lot fitter than probably when I was a bit younger. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
Yep. It's a
And
fun bike, and I, like I said, hardly anyone builds a following the way that I build it, but we did launch and sell the bike as I build it, and we have
yeah,
sold some. And those people that we've sold it to, they are huge fans. They love it. But it's even more fun for me to put somebody who wasn't even looking that direction onto the bike, and then they're just like, "Wait, what? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I they just didn't expect to like it, and they love it."
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's just different bike, but when we had time in COVID and stuff, and we had time to try things and do things. I had at the time a nuke proof reactor, which was 29 130 rear travel. I put a short stroke shock on it, which made it 120 on the rear, and I got a 120 SID. Put that on the front, and I did put cross country tires on, and that was the bike I rode the most during that period because I was just blasting out from my house. I had time to do cross country rides all the time. We didn't have big hills, and that bike was really fun. But it wasn't as nice a bike as the following for that. But I can understand what you mean from that for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. And so what I've never been a road where you guys are. What type of riding is there? Is there all kinds of different riding in the area?
Yeah. So I've had the privilege of riding and racing all over the world in my 32 years. And so my wife and I moved to Bellingham to work for Evil in 2017.
Hmm.
And uh, I had already known that Bellingham was a riding hotspot. You heard about it. I'm great friends with Lars Sternberg, and I had customers up here. Kona, Chris Mandel at Kona, right? I always loved riding with him, and he's now at Rock Shocks. But so I knew of the legend of Bellingham, and I'd come up and I'd do a ride with a customer occasionally. Just dip my toes in. But now that I live here, I can truly understand. I mean, I've got Squamish and Whistler just to the north of me. And Nigel, I never go there to ride because there is so much riding here in Bellingham that I can't get to it all. There are really good trails, like trails that when you ride them, you're like, that is my favorite downhill that I haven't ridden for like a year because there's so many of those. And the way that the riders build the trails here, I quite like it because it's you can be not the best downhiller and you can still feel like you're a gnarly rider. They give you go arounds if you're not
Yeah,
comfortable on something, but
yeah,
then also the way they're built, you can work your way up to it. And I'll be the first to admit there's so many trails where I've looked at a jump for more than a year. I've ridden past it,
yeah,
right? And then I've followed riders in, watched their speed, and eventually I'm like, I think I can do it. And then I hit it. And so there's something for everyone here. There's something for the first timers that have never been on rides.
yeah.
We do first time rides here at Evil, and sometimes
That's
I go
great.
out because I coached high school mountain biking in my younger years, and so I really enjoy going out with first timers and
Yeah,
seeing that spark, right? Seeing that, oh my gosh, this could be my next most favorite thing in my life.
yeah.
And we have trails for them, but we also have all the way up to trails that what the locals say will scare the Canadians. And I don't I don't ride those trails. I mean, I've gone and checked out one of those trails in particular. It's just above my house. And Nigel, I've never been on my hands and knees clawing for dear life more than that, right? Like it's absolute insanity, insanity. But there's everything in between, and
Okay.
there's so much of it. And we can ride year round. year
Yeah.
round. The soil handles the weather good. I feel like we get as much rain as you guys, but the way the soil handles the rain, it's great. And so we can go all the time.
No way. I need to get over there at some point. I've never even rode there. Sounds amazing. I'm terrifying. To be honest, we're quite lucky here in the Tweed Valley in Scotland. You know, it rains a lot here in the winter as well, but the terrain handles the weather well. You can go and ride whether it's chucking it down with rain or it. Sometimes this summer we had a really good summer and it was really dry. And sometimes here it's slippier when it's drier than when it's wet because it's quite stony and it handles the weather. But yeah, we have amazing good trails here as well that I'm sure you would love. What we don't have is don't think we have some of them gnarlier trails that you're talking about with the huge features. Everything here is more just the gnarliness of the trails is if it's a steep trail but there's no like huge features on the trails here. So but amazing riding. I'm sure you'd love it if you came over here.
I absolutely need to come visit, and I'm sure it'll happen one of these days. So
Yep. Well, you're welcome to stay at ours anytime you want to come over. That'd be great. Show you around.
thank you.
No problem. So what's back to Evil, what's the kind of day-to-day steps that the company does? Obviously, you just launched this new amazing bike, which is, I'm sure it's keeping you super busy. What's the day-to-day jobs that are going on that you have to deal with?
So when you're in the bike industry, especially now, you have to be ready to do a lot of different jobs. And for me, that's how it's always been. No matter what job I've had within the bike industry, you've had to be able to pull a lot of different tools out of the shed and know how to use it. And it's no different in Evil because we're a pretty small team. And so in any one day, like with the bike launch, uh, because our marketing people, when I say marketing people, right, graphics, photo, they're typically the ones that do marketing. But there's a lot of work with media and there's a lot of communication back and forth. So I assumed that. And I know most of the media from over the years anyways.
Yeah,
There'll be sample builds. There's product development samples coming in, right? Because this bike is just the first of like a long line of what's coming. And we're very actively developing all the bikes, right? We never stop developing bikes. And so one of the hats I wear here is also product manager. I share that job, of course, with our engineer, Matt Robertson, who I think is a much better product manager than me. But also Dave Weigel, right? I have the advantage of having him at arm's reach at any one point in time. And so the confidence that it gives me personally is huge. My boss at the bike shop when I first started working there, Don Dragasette, one of the best people I've ever known, he instilled in me that you always have to surround yourself with people that are way smarter than you. And that's exactly what I've done here at Evil. And I do my best to keep up and keep morale up and everything. But really, it's doing whatever's needed. And so when times are tight, when margin is down, that might be working a lot of 7-day weeks in a row. That might be helping out in the showroom on the weekends. That might mean cleaning the building, right? You just never know. Going and working a demo event.
yeah,
It's a little bit of everything, honestly. But of course, then there's the business part of the job where I got to get month end financials out and I got to make sure that, cash flow is tracking for inventory purchases. And I got to talk to our purchasing guy and make sure that, we're not getting too much or we're getting enough. And that's quite a stressful job.
yeah, I bet.
The part of the job that I maybe like the most is the ride testing part of the job. So Evil does not use leverage rate curve charts to tune our shocks. We actually do physical ride testing. And early on at Evil, I was not the person that did that. Billy Lewis, our former product manager, and Kevin Walsh were the two that did that. And then Mike Giese, they were all three really good. But I learned from them how to do it. I really didn't know how it worked. And so learning from them and learning from Weagle, it has eventually become my job. And it's really, really fun to have that magic spark where it's like, okay, like you go from a wrong tune to a correct tune, and it's like, wow, like the difference is just huge. And we honestly, as Evil, we need to do a better job about educating consumers about, hey, if you put an aftermarket shock on your bike, like we really got to help you make sure it's the right tune, because if
Yeah.
it's wrong,
Yes.
then
Yeah.
it's the difference between your feet killing you at the bottom of the downhill, right? And your hands being numb to like not feeling any of that and just being like, I'm invincible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a really fun part of the job. I also
Yeah.
really enjoy working with all of our vendors. And in particular, when I get to go to one of the larger vendors and mix it up with a bunch of the old product managers that I worked with at other bike brands, you know, because they at one point were my customer. And I really enjoyed working with all of them. And we're all bike people at heart. So it's really fun to stay in touch. And if there's one thing that I don't like about working at Evil, it's like I got a little bit siloed, right? In my old job at WTV, I got to talk to everyone. And now it's like, well, Evil's kind of the competition, even though I don't actually think we're real competition for any bike brand because we're that small, right?
Yeah.
Um, but but that's a really fun part of the job for me is like the riding and testing and new product part and just figuring out ways like what's the next things we can do to make the rider's experience better. Because to us, when a person buys an Evil, they're choosing to spend a huge portion of their free time with us,
Yeah.
right? It's our job to make sure that when they grab that bike,
Yeah.
like their free time is the best that it could possibly be.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
everything that I do is trying to make that experience better for them, whether it be on the bike or whether they pick up the phone and they call us or they email in. It's like we want that experience to be the best possible thing that we can give somebody.
Brilliant. Yeah. That's so important, I think, because a person coming spending this amount of money on a bike, they want to feel special. They deserve to feel special and be looked after. And yeah, it's 100% agree with that. And and you guys offer demo rides and bikes to hire out from your building, don't you?
We do, yeah. So we have an entire demo fleet of every make, every model, every size here available for demo. And let me tell you, Nigel, I wish that we had more demo fleets, that we had a demo fleet in the UK, and that we
Yeah,
had at least a demo fleet traveling around continental Europe and
yeah,
down in Australia. But I'll also tell you, a full fleet of Evil demo bikes is a lot of money.
yes.
It's a lot of money. So we, because we don't come out with new models every year and we do spec updates, man, our demos, those bikes run for a long time. And you want to talk about having confidence in a bike. The
Yeah.
amount that these bikes in our fleet are used is incredible. So it just gives us so much more confidence in our product when, people come in and they ride a bike that's like literally been in the fleet for like 2.5 years
Yeah.
and they come back with a huge smile and they want to buy one. And
Yeah. That's the
so,
dream. Yeah.
yeah. And so we have our guy that runs the showroom, Joe. A lot of times he'll say like we have a very high demo to sale conversion rate, and
Yeah.
he's absolutely right. If
Yeah.
you set somebody up on an Evil, make sure their sag is set correctly, make sure their saddle height and their fore and aft is good, tire pressure is good, brake lever angle is good, they're going to have a good experience on that bike. If we
100%.
didn't care and we just sent them out and didn't do any of that, You can make the best bike ride terrible.
Yeah,
And so,
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
yep. So being
Yeah.
able to do that for every single person that touches an Evil is high priority. Also, being able to do that for every single person that buys an Evil, right?
Yeah.
Being able to reach out to them. We're small
Yeah.
enough to where we can reach out to them and make sure that we're at least coaching them through it via phone or email. So,
Yeah, that's one thing when I eventually get this shop up and running and open, that's what I really want to focus on because I've had, quite a few friends and just, riding bike for so many years, you just know how to set your bike up so it rides good. And a lot of my friends, they just let me put the bars in a certain position and the brake levers, and I know everyone's different, but you can properly set a bike up rubbish and vice versa, have it so people get a good experience on the bike, which is the first time you want to the first time you ride a new bike, it needs to be set up well, otherwise you can have a bad experience, can't you? For sure.
absolutely. It's the difference. It can be the difference between the worst day you've ever had or the
Yeah,
best day you've ever had. And
absolutely.
that is seriously that could be 20 or 30 pounds any one way in your front or rear shock
Yeah,
or your tires, right? Like
yeah,
just that amount
yeah.
could completely change your experience.
100%. And a question I've got, because me and the bikes are great. I've rode them. You obviously know more than me, but all the bikes I've rode so far, I've really loved and enjoyed riding. When you send a bike off to, say, I was going to say a magazine then because I'm old school, but you send a bike off for a test review. You know, how do you guys feel about that? Because you have so many different testers, you have so many different opinions. Um, sometimes I get the impression that some bike riders and reviewers they go off the current trend, whether the reach is long enough for what they think is correct, the seat angle is the right, degree, whatever it is. Do you ever get some feedback where you think, what's this guy talking about? I mean, how do you guys deal with that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think rider reviewers have a really tough job because they ride a lot of different bikes. And uh, I think when you ride that many different bikes, it can be a little bit disorienting almost. So I don't envy any ride reviewer. I think it would be really hard. And what we try to do at Evil is we try to make sure that anyone that we get on a bike, uh, we can either ride with them or we can get a lot of time on the phone with a PowerPoint, like really trying to truly explain how Delta system works, what they're going to feel, which is actually easy for us because we do it day in and day out with our demo bikes. And the customers come back and they will tell us before we even get to tell them, right? Like how it felt. So it's a very, very easy and repeatable thing for us. But for journalists and test riders that haven't ridden our bikes, it's important that we kind of try to explain the whole package to them ahead of time so that they can then know what they feel when they're out there. And we have sent bikes out, and we've learned that this was a mistake, but we've sent bikes out to riders who, they're very familiar with 4-bar FSR and how to set that up, and they thought the Evil was wrong, right? They thought it was way too soft initially, and so they firmed it up, or they ran less sag, less than 30% sag, or they put extra tokens in, just thinking like, oh no, it's way too soft, it's going to be an inefficient climber.
Yeah.
So we've, you just have to learn your lesson and correct going forward. And so, yeah, I think we've had some less than positive reviews, but I think since those, we really like we've learned we need to work more with the media. And that's part of the reason why I take that on myself because, I really want to make sure it's done right. And just like a customer, right? I want to make sure that they have a good experience. I want to make sure they're getting the best time they can have on our bike.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. That 100% agree with you. And that's living somewhere where I live now. It's so easy to do that. You could have a customer come down. You can take them out on a ride for an hour. Make sure that the bike's set up well for them, and they get that experience that you can get from riding an evil bike. So yeah, good stuff.
exactly. And it's fun. It's fun when you see the light bulb go off, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, like
Yeah, yeah,
this thing is different. And that's what we hear a lot, right? Like compared to 4-bar FSR VPP, right? We hear it and we take pride and you know, people are like, wow, this is like a radically different bike, but in a good way, just
yeah,
so it's
yeah,
good. It feels so good to be different in an age where so many bike companies are like the design of the bike, the design of the suspension is kind of blurring together. Where if you took the graphics off the thing,
yep,
you might not be able to tell what brand it is, right?
yeah,
And that's like when you look at this bike, like it is unmistakably evil. There is
yeah,
there is no
yeah.
there's no way to think anything else. And
No, for sure. And cool. Well, I'm super looking forward to trying one of those. What would you say in the area of Bellingham? What bikes sell the most out of the line? Is the one that sells more than others, or is it quite diverse?
yeah, when I started working at Evil, we basically had the following, and then we had the longer travel bikes, the Reckoning and the Insurgent. And it was funny because customers could never decide which one they wanted, right? It's like, well, those are very different bikes, right? But they want like the light, faster trail bike, but they also want the big, just eat everything mistake eraser. So the offering when we launched that was the one in the middle, and that has really become mostly the go-to bike.
Okay.
It's yeah, the offering really is our kind of bread and butter bike for sure, and rightly so. It does so many things well, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting because you know previously when I worked for Nukeproof, and it's a completely different bike. It's just different suspension, and it's not a Delta Link. But in the UK, I'd say people more over bike. You know what I mean. Like where I live, the offering's fine. You don't really need a reckoning. Maybe the reckoning helps you out a little bit more if you're more not used to these trails, and you're kind of making mistakes and stuff. Um, but people tended to sort of overbike in the UK, so the longer travel bikes sold better than the 140 bikes, for instance. But then there's other parts of the UK where a 140 bike would be way better than a longer travel bike, but people seem to still want to overbike for maybe those trips where they went away at the weekend for somewhere else. Um, and then I'd say in the last year or two, it's got a lot more popular for people to like downhill bikes went out of fashion a little bit if you weren't a downhill racer. But downhill bikes are coming back again because there's so many bike parks are accessible. People go on like a holiday in the summertime where they go to, the Alps, and they just have a chairlift access. So downhill bikes are getting a little bit more popular. So some people would maybe have an e-bike instead of a trail bike or an enduro bike, and then a downhill bike to go and ride the bike parks. Is that happening in where you are as well, or is that just more of a UK thing?
well, so we obviously don't make a downhill bike, which
No, no.
which uh pains all of us to our core, right? It's like we would like nothing more to have a downhill bike for sure. But we also all know that like, there's not a very good business case for a downhill bike, right? You usually sell most of them at a severe discount, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So, but we have a lot of riders that ride reckonings that are like, man, this is like arguably as good as my downhill bike in a weird sort of way, but I can pedal it uphill too. Like, what in the hell is going on here? So that's a good place to be in that regard. And
Yeah.
then, and then, yeah, of course, we're seeing e-bike sales increase steadily, and we only have one model. When we designed our Apocalypse, we basically were like, okay, our Reckoning, how sweet would that be if we put a motor on it, right? And it is. It rides just like the
I
Reckoning, but
love mine. Yeah.
pedal assist uphill, and it's super super sweet. So in general, people, our customers, evil customers, do make their bikes more burly, and our spec kind of reflects that. We don't really put anything except for the following SID build, where it's like you're going out of your way to lighten that thing up.
Yeah.
Every other bike is a pretty bruiser build. It's Maven brakes, and like we spec coil on the Reckoning and Insurgent and Apocalypse, and so we've seen what customers do, and we try to appease them by making our standard spec something to where they won't have to change too much, right? We really try to focus on having all aftermarket parts that people would have gone and tried to find for themselves
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that in general, evil riders, whether they are or they aren't, they think of themselves as like they're going to attack the trail harder than most, which is awesome because that's what we want them to do. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the new bike with light wheels and a 150 fork and an inline shock is a phenomenal trail bike. Do I think we're going to sell any like that? No. Like we're probably going to sell, like I don't know. It's right now the numbers are more Super Deluxe Air and Lyric 160. But
Right.
we offer the Zeb 170 with the Vivid, and it's very possible that more aggressive spec will kind of pound for pound match the Super Deluxe Lyric spec. So
You see, I think where I live, the the Zeb and the Vivid would be the more popular build, I think. Especially just
yep,
in recent times, like or in the last 12 months or whatever, the EDR has gone a bit more enduro again, a bit more pedally stages. So people are kind of going back to a bike that that is perfect for. I think that is the perfect EDR race bike now. Unfortunately, Enduro World Cup has took a bit of a downward spiral. I'm hoping it'll go back up, but I think that bike you've just got behind you there now is the perfect bike for enduro races for sure. Um, but mentioning the Reckoning, this past 2 years I've been out to Morzine and took my son, and last year I took my Reckoning, just took it as it was, and it was good. Um, and then this year, my son was on a downhill bike, so I just whacked a 190 boxer on the front, kept the
yep,
12 speed on and the dropper post, and man, I had so much fun on that bike this summer. It was amazing. Yeah, it was good. I mean, if I was to be racing, gnarly, trying to race and win downhill races, probably you need a little tiny bit more travel on the rear just to compete with the guys on other bikes. But for your alpine biking downhill holiday, it was absolutely fine. You know,
yeah,
and I could
absolutely, and
pedal to the chairlift.
exactly. You can pedal places, but that just speaks towards the magic of the Delta Link, right?
Yeah,
That's like what Weagle builds into these bikes is just incredible. Like the capability on all sides of the riding experience. We're so lucky. We are so
Yeah.
lucky to have that system and his mind behind the way our rides bike or the
Yeah.
way our bikes ride. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did a podcast with Dave, and then I've had quite a few phone calls, video calls with Dave, just chatting stuff to him. He's such a cool dude to chat to, and yeah, he meant, he obviously does so many different suspension platform and designs for other people, but I asked him which was his favorite one, and yeah, it's the Delta Link. So it's and yeah, I love it. It's amazing. Well, I'm obviously I won't ask you on here because I'm. You can probably tell I'm a pretty big bike nerd. I love riding bikes more than anything, but I really love bikes as well. I've come across racers that I've worked with, and they love riding the bikes and they love racing, but I'm not that into bikes. If do you know what I mean? That they're not as into bikes as I might be, or maybe you are.
Mhm.
I think that's being interested in the bikes is as fun as riding them sometimes. So I'm super excited to see what other bikes you guys have got in the pipeline and what's to come. It's exciting, but I'm sure you've got to keep those bit secret for now.
We do as much as we would like to share, right?
Yeah,
It's part of the challenge is that because we are so much a design company and it's so much artwork aside from engineering, we don't have a timeline necessarily. Like, of course, we have a goal, but we, at the same point, we don't want to disappoint anyone, right? And uh, true design, true artwork, it takes time. And
yeah,
what I've learned as a leader too is like, I I got to step away. I cannot rush this because like that is exactly opposite of what we want to do. Despite how much our customers might want something new or might be expecting something new, I really need them to appreciate that there's a process and it can take time. And we want to make sure that whatever comes next is just the absolute coolest thing that we've ever made and our coolest rendition of what a bike in that travel category should be. And that's not an easy job. That is not something you can just snap your fingers and do. And there's a lot of learning that happens along that process. And so we take that job very seriously. And yeah, we definitely we hear people when they're like, "Oh, it's been too long," and it's like, well, yes, but also the bike you're riding is really good
yeah,
still. So
yeah,
that takes a little bit of urgency away from
yeah.
trying to make stuff faster too.
Yeah, like you say, I think people do get too involved in, oh, that bike came out 5 years ago, so it's not as good as another brand's bike that they've just released, and it's nonsense. It's literally the only thing I did, especially on my offering, was oh, I've been riding a bike with a steeper seat post, which is,
Mm-hmm.
which you've addressed on the new bike. Literally all I did was tilt my seat forward, move it a bit on the rails, and it
Yep.
put it in the right place anyway. So it didn't affect the bike overall. Do you know what I mean? The still the kinematics and the geometry of the current bike was just as good as any other bike that had come out this year or last year. So
Yeah, for sure. And a rider at your height, at your saddle height, fully extended, like uh, it's roughly if you move your saddle 12 millimeters, that's a full degree in
yeah,
seat tube angle. So there's a lot of adjustability there.
yeah, for sure.
And also the bikes that you ride, right? Like the geometry adjustment on the generation of bike you're riding is incredible because you can put an angle headset in, you can slacken it by 1 degree or 1.5 degrees at the head tube. You can
Yeah,
also flip the flip chips in the rear and slacken it by an additional half a degree.
Yeah.
The cool thing about the flip chips on Evils is that the leverage rate doesn't change on the rear suspension. You're riding the same leverage rate curve. You just change your geometry. Now you'll have to adjust your saddle and maybe adjust the tilt on your bars because like even
Yeah.
a half a degree, like that's a big difference. But the amount of, anyone that thinks that a current Evil has like too steep a head tube angle, it's like, well, we have all of those adjustments. Like you can
Yeah.
slacken that bike up to 2 degrees if you want.
Cool.
So like the world's your oyster. Just go for it.
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, I was really bad for wanting a slack head angle, but since I've been riding, my evils, I've switched away. I think it was more in my head. I was thinking my head angle's slacker. It's going to be easier to go down steep stuff, but it's
Yep.
not all about the head angle for sure.
No, it's really not. It's about
Yeah.
how everything,
Mm.
all of the numbers relate to one another. And especially, I mean, so much of it, Nigel, isn't related to the static numbers that
Mm.
the bike is when it's sitting uncompressed, right? It's
Yeah.
more about once you set into your sag
Yeah.
and how everything is working together. Like that is what's truly making your ride. And so it's super cool to hear you say this, right? Because so many times it is just important for people to get on and try it. And
Yeah.
and so often people don't feel like they need to slacken, even though they thought they did.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's just part of the Weagle magic, and it's so cool. It's
Yeah.
it's so cool.
It is. It is. Well, brilliant. I mean, I took up quite a lot of your morning there, so I really appreciate that. I could go on for the whole day talking about the bikes and what you guys are doing there. I really need to come over there at some point and go out for a ride and check you. I keep looking at all the photos and videos of your facility there. It looks amazing. So I'd just suggest to anyone who's passing through to definitely drop in and check you guys out and take one of your bikes out for a spin. I don't think they'll be disappointed. For,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nigel. It's seriously like a highlight of my career to be on your podcast alongside of the lineup that you've had, and I'm so flattered. So thank you, and we at Evil are also so flattered that you choose to ride Evil. It's just we couldn't get a better compliment. So thank you.
Well, thank you, but I've not won Downieville, so I think you're much higher than me in the in the stats there. But thank you so much for your time, Jason. I've really enjoyed it, and you're doing an amazing job there. So keep doing what you're doing, and I can't wait to see, especially ride that bike behind you, and then also see whatever things you've got cooking in the background there. But yeah, thanks so much for your time, and yeah, say hello to everyone over there, and it's an honor to ride your bikes. I absolutely love them.
Right. We appreciate you. Thank you.
No worries. Well, cool. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day. I really hope that the bike sales go well on that new bike, and I hope everything works out really good. I'm sure it will. And yeah, appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, well, I hope everyone enjoyed that. I thought it was a super interesting podcast, really cool to catch up with Jason, and I'm sure a lot of you don't know how much of an amazing bike rider he has and some of the achievements he's got with his racing as well as being the CEO of Evil. So props to Jason there. Yeah, been a bit slack on the podcast lately. I've been busy trying to build a bike shop, which hopefully at some point we'll be able to do some podcasts out of there. But hope everyone's good, and please like and subscribe, do all that stuff to help us. We've still got merch, which I'm rocking today. So if you feel like buying yourself a new t-shirt or hoodie, please do that. And yeah, get out there in the mud and the rain if you're in the UK, and we'll see you soon with another exciting guest. Cheers.